I lived in Washington, D.C. for almost 4 years, and I took some questions from my Instagram followers to answer about living in D.C., and I'm gonna answer them here now for you. Let's get right into it. A lot of questions were about where to live. So neighborhoods you've lived in and your favorites. So when I first lived in DC, I lived in Northwest DC. It's a really beautiful area, but it's full of rich families. Like there are a lot of mansions and not a lot of young people. It's where I would assume a lot of established families live. I moved there because it was near American University, which is where I was going to grad school. Because I didn't know anywhere else in the city, I was like, oh, let me just move closer to my grad school. And it was great. And it was great for my first year in DC. It's definitely a lot slower paced, but that also means that there's not a lot of young people there, not a lot of young professionals. There was no one really in that grad school season that I knew in Northwest. So when I say Northwest, it's like Chevy Chase in DC, because there's Chevy Chase in DC and in Maryland. So I was on the DC side. Friendship Heights, Tenleytown, that's kind of what those neighborhoods are called. But then I moved to Southwest, and Southwest was instantly a game changer. My life changed like within the first few weeks. There's definitely a lot more young people. The area is very up and coming. My social life exploded the first like 10 days I was here. The area is also walking distance to a lot of monuments and DC sites. So before, if something was happening at the National Mall while I lived in Northwest, it would not have been easy. It would have taken me like 45 minutes to get down. So if I heard about someone famous being there, like one time Kerry Washington was there filming Scandal and I didn't get to go see it, but if you live in Southwest and something like that happens, then you can easily walk over. I live like 4 blocks away from the National Mall. So I love being able to walk to the National Mall, the Tidal Basin, all of it. It's all right there. I absolutely love it. You also have walking access to Navy Yard and the wharf. Sorry, I keep playing with my bangs. And the wharf. And the wharf is on the water. It's absolutely beautiful. It allows you not to feel so landlocked because you're like looking at water. So many restaurants, there's even event venues. The Nationals Stadium is in Navy Yard, so it's really close as well in Southwest, so definitely recommend. Those are the 2 neighborhoods I've lived in, but I also have friends who live in Cap Hill and they absolutely love it there. They found like a row home that they could rent with roommates, or they live in basements, which is a thing around here. And then I also have friends who live in Alexandria, Virginia, and I've had a lot of friends actually live in Alexandria, and it's a really beautiful area. It's where Old Town is, so it's very historical. I know it's not DC proper, and I like living in DC proper, but honestly, it takes 10 minutes to get into Alexandria, like from where I live in DC. So Alexandria is closer to the National Mall and stuff like that than many other parts of DC. So it's definitely an option and it is less expensive. Best areas to find a luxury apartment. There are a lot of luxury apartments in Southwest, so Navy Yard, the Wharf, Southwest Waterfront. If you look in those areas, you'll definitely find a lot. They always have stuff on offer. But there really are luxury apartments everywhere. This is just the area I'm most familiar with. Is it a car-friendly city? So I would say yes. Obviously, there are moments where I drive and I regret it instantly because I can't find a parking spot, or there have been times where it took me like 30 minutes to find a parking spot. It took longer to find a parking spot than it did to actually drive to wherever I was going. It's still a city, but it's definitely doable. I've had a car, but that's because I will like drive to family or something semi-regularly. So it was a priority for me, but you definitely don't need to have a car. The metro is fantastic. Of course, Uber and Lyft is a thing. It is fairly walkable as long as your neighborhood is near to wherever you need to walk. You don't need a car. I know a lot of people who don't have a car and they get on brilliantly here in DC, but I do have a car and there are places to park. It's not like New York City. It's just sometimes, especially if you're going out to dinner or something, it will probably take you 20 minutes to find a parking spot. Apartment hunting advice. So people kind of always ask for that, and I just feel like you have to go through the process. Like I use apps like Zillow and apartments.com to find listings, and then I put them into a spreadsheet to compare and contrast pros and cons, and then I reach out to those buildings and ask them, what they have on offer, if they have any deals going on, any sales. And then I also ask friends, if they like their neighborhood, if they like their buildings, or if they have friends who are raving about one. I just kind of ask around. So there's no like secret trick. It's not a fun thing to do to look for an apartment, but there's really no trick other than to just do it. Another question along those lines, how to find the right area. It's expensive to live in the city, but can it work? Can it be done affordably? So Alexandria is a great option because you're, like I said, you're basically in the city. Again, I personally like being in DC proper, but there's no reason to not live in Alexandria, honestly. It's right across the river, it's right there. Like I said, if you live in Alexandria, you're closer to the National Mall than some people who live in DC proper. Another way to make living in DC more affordable is I lived with a roommate for a long time. I didn't need to live with a roommate. I could have afforded a 1-bedroom by myself. However, we got to live in a massive, huge, beautiful apartment that there's no way I would have been able to afford, but because we split the rent, it was definitely possible. So if you want to have a bigger, more beautiful, maybe more aesthetically pleasing place, you can definitely have a roommate or two, and it's possible. Also, when you're considering an apartment building, always ask them like if they have an offer going. You know, a lot of times they'll have things like an amenity fees or parking half off or for free, or a lot of buildings they'll do 2 months rent free or something like that. And you can ask if you can prorate those free rents across your 12-month lease, and that essentially brings down your rent price. I won't go into it a ton here because that's not what this video is for, but you can always Google like, what is prorating rent? And that has been a game changer for me. Okay, let's move on. Any best dog-friendly places? Advice or tips related to living in DC with a pup? Well, I have one. There she is. She's sleeping. Yes, there are so many dog-friendly places. DC is a very open city. You know, it's not like a concrete jungle. There are parks everywhere. There is lots of waterfront areas everywhere. So basically, any restaurant with a patio is probably going to be dog-friendly, especially ones along the water like Georgetown, the Wharf, Navy Yard. They're all gonna have patios where dogs can come out and hang. As far as advice or tips, there are definitely places you can get your dog out and about. I love taking Ember to the National Mall, or yesterday we just did a walk all around the tidal basin, and it's so fun. And I know dogs obviously don't understand what's going on as far as like history and monuments, but I'm like, wow, I give my dog such a cultured life. She's so lucky, even though she has no clue. I know she has no clue. Also, DC is a small city that's not very congested. The sidewalks aren't congested. The streets usually aren't congested. So it feels like safe taking your dog out and about and walking around. Okay, here's a different kind of question. Best places to grocery shop. So the main grocery stores here are Safeway, I live above one, and Giant. There are obviously other ones as well, but those are like the two main ones for the area. I prefer going to Trader Joe's. There's also Whole Foods here, but I think Whole Foods is overpriced and criminal, but I love Trader Joe's, and there are a ton of them all over the city. Any recommendations for affordable photographers in DC? I am friends with several photographers. Jay Bruce is an amazing photographer. She just took my photos. I'll put some of her examples of her work right here. If you're interested in engagement or wedding, my friend Sarah Shank is an amazing photographer as well. I'll put both of their websites in the description below for you. Dating and friends. Wow, we got a few questions about this one. Dating advice. I know you have a British boyfriend. I love that it's common knowledge I have a British boyfriend, but maybe advice from friends. I will have you know, I did date in DC. I dated, I don't want to say a lot, that sounds like weird, but I dated in DC before I went to London and met my boyfriend. I use dating apps. I use Bumble and Hinge. I know Hinge is usually preferred for people who are a little nervous to use dating apps. It's just, it feels a little bit more wholesome. You know, I met my boyfriend in London on Bumble, and I like Bumble because women message men first. Men can't send a message to women until women have written the message, and the whole founding mission is to like lower toxic masculinity and stuff like that, and just aggressiveness towards women in dating. And so I'm all about that. So I love Bumble for that reason. I guess this isn't common in every region of the United States yet, but dating apps are super normal here. No one like judges you for using a dating app. I think when you get into cities and stuff, it's the easiest way to meet people. Other than that, be willing to talk to strangers and be willing to make friends with anyone, because you never know who is going to maybe turn into more than a friend, or you never know what friend can connect you with someone that they know, and then you end up dating. They can set you up on blind dates or whatever. So just be really social. I'm really introverted, so I'm not saying you need to put yourself out there all the time, but just, you know, say yes to going out with a new group of friends or whatever. Even if nothing romantic comes from it, you have some socialization, and even us introverts need to be socialized. Is it a cold city? Like, is it hard to make friends in DC? I'm moving at the end of the year. Yay, congrats for your move. They actually say that DC is one of the loneliest cities in the world. I feel like I should preface this and say that it's hard to make friends anywhere when you're an adult. It's not super easy. But DC has this added layer of it's a really transient city, so people come and go a lot, and a lot of it has to do with so many jobs are politically related. And obviously administrations change, you know, leaders and political views change all the time, so people definitely come and go. It's also hard to connect with everyone because political views are kind of hard to hide. Like when someone tells you, oh, I work for so-and-so, then it's like, okay. I'm a huge proponent of being friends with people, even if they don't have your exact same political views, as long as you can connect on other things and you know, just are genuinely friends. But it is just an added layer where it's really easy because of everyone's careers for you to figure out really soon what people's political leanings are, which I think everyone should be open-minded and not judge people with snap judgments, but that's just me. It is just an added layer that's really unique to the city. I got really lucky because about 6 months after I moved here, a ton of my friends, like a huge network of friends, moved here who we all kind of like knew of each other from undergrad, and so that was kind of crazy. I did not know that was coming. I was not expecting that. I was like, I'm just gonna have to make friends somehow through grad school or whatever, which I only have one friend that I made in grad school. Shout out to Elise. She's my ride or die. I'm obsessed with her. My one friend from grad school. But other than that, I did get really lucky about a lot of people that I just kind of knew, people who were moving here. Making friends is hard anywhere, but as long as you're being open and saying yes and not leaning into being introverted all the time, like I have been known to do in the past, then it's definitely possible. People are usually really nice here. I don't really know anyone who is just like off the bat mean. Because it's really rare to meet like a DC native. I do know a few of them, but they are really rare. Most people are here from a different region of the United States, so it's not like you can say, oh, DC people are mean, because we all moved here from somewhere else pretty much. Not everyone, again, I know a lot of DC natives, but most people you meet will have come here for work from a different region, and so there's no stereotypical like mean DC person, if that makes sense. Everyone's pretty nice. Okay, now let's talk about safety. I got a few questions on safety living in DC. Have you ever felt you had issues with safety? I would say no, not really. DC has a really big homelessness issue. It's very, very heartbreaking, and there have just been a couple times, again, it's not even something that I would completely fault them for because I don't understand their situation, but there have been a couple times where, you know, there was someone who was aggressive, who was homeless, and I was like, wow, if this person pulls out a weapon, I'm literally dead right now. This is how I go. Thankfully that didn't happen. I'd say the only time that there was like tension and I felt really uneasy was leading up to the 2020 election. It was very, very tense here. It was like malleable. You could feel it in the air. You know, it's after the fact. This isn't me trying to be dramatic. This is not me trying to make a political statement. It was just, you know, everyone was boarding things up. There had been a lot of protests last year, and it was getting to a point. And then, you know, a few weeks later, there was the insurrection on the Capitol. So my feelings of danger and uneasiness were definitely warranted, but that was a really unique and rare situation, and that's all I'm gonna say about that. The political environment is not something that you feel or is conscious every day. Overall, I'm a really cautious person. I don't really walk around at night. Like, people make comments like, oh, you walk around by yourself. And yeah, during the day, I walk around by myself all the time. I'm not worried about that at all, but I don't really walk around at night. When the world was open and normal, if my girlfriends and I went out on a Saturday night or something, I would instantly get into an Uber or Lyft and go straight to my home. I wouldn't like walk down the street, or I wouldn't even usually take public transportation at night. I'm just an overly cautious person. Now, I don't really take my dog on a long walk at night. I try to kind of be in for the night, you know, after the sun goes down. I don't know, I'm just smart about it. I've traveled alone a lot around the world, and so I think that just makes me a little more cautious, but I'm also introverted, so if I have to be in by like 9 p.m., I'm okay with it. Do you feel safe in DC? Is it overwhelming, the political environment? And what are your thoughts on American University? Okay, so let's start with the safety thing first. So like I said, the only time the political environment has been like, oh, I feel really at danger was leading up to the 2020 election. And again, those feelings were warranted since there was an actual insurrection 4 blocks away from my house. But again, that was a rare occurrence. This is not something that you feel all the time. It's not like anytime there's a political something, you feel in danger. Like that was kind of a one-time thing, at least for me in the last 4 years living here. And I have to say that's because of my proximity to the Capitol building. I know a lot of other people in DC who lived in like Northeast DC or even Northwest DC. They totally felt safe. They were far enough away where things like that don't really affect them. I just live close enough to where like certain roads will be blocked off if something's happening at the Capitol, and I'm like, oh, that's the road I take to go home. Interesting. But you can live in other parts of DC, even though I do think Southwest is the best place to live, and whatever's going on politically really won't affect you. Now, thoughts on American University. I am really, really, really grateful for my time at EU. The professors were great and they really helped me in my career outside of the classroom, even when they weren't my professors during that semester. Like one semester, like for some reason I was trying to get internships and for whatever reason, no one was hiring me. I kept on getting denied. And so I called my professor, had her look at my resume. She gave me a lot of great feedback. We were on the phone for like an hour. She gave me a ton of resources and tips. And another professor of mine like sponsored my internship when I got it, which was a lot of time and work for him. And I was the only one he was sponsoring, and he did it just for me. And that was incredible. Also, other professors have just connected me with professionals in their network, made it really, really helpful for things like research, projects, and honestly, they really are leaders in their subject matter professionally and used their connections and expertise to help me, even when they weren't my professors that semester. They literally had no reason to do so other than their genuine care for my career, and so I really loved that. No university is perfect. There were some things about AU where I was like frustrated and didn't love. There's always going to be issues with universities, but I really loved AU's vibe. They're in an extremely well-respected school, but they weren't like all about their reputation. Like Georgetown is just kind of like, oh, you go to Georgetown, and it's just all about the reputation. Even George Washington University, I considered going there. I was accepted, and I even got a bit of a scholarship, and I turned them down because I was like, you guys are just kind of all about yourselves. Like it was just all about like, oh, go to George Washington, go to the GW, and I was just kind of like, I don't love your vibe. I didn't feel like it was going to be about me and my education, and AU was 100% like that, and it is really well respected. I didn't have any opportunities turned down because I, went to AU instead of GW or Georgetown. Okay, let's round out this Q&A with restaurants. What is your top 5 restaurants in DC? Okay, this is definitely going to be more than 5, and I apologize, but the more the merrier. There are other restaurants too that I love that might be a part of my top 5, but they fit into other questions, so just hold tight for those as well. So I love Copycat Co., Great Asian Fusion, Founding Farmers. DC people will think I'm so basic for saying that. It's like, it is a basic place. It's like when tourists come in, that is the restaurant they go to, but it is so good. It's like farm to table. Mwah, delicious, honestly. This is another one I think people are gonna give me lip about, is Le Diplomate is really good. It's expensive, it's nicer, but it's kind of an iconic DC place. It is a place that you definitely have to plan in advance that you're gonna go, but it's amazing French food. I've gone there a couple times at night, and because it's at night and you can't really see outside, you feel like you could be in Paris. Food is excellent. It might be a little overrated, but I like touristy stuff, and I like being where everyone wants to go. It's honestly really, really good. Another one I like is the Jefferson. It is a really great brunch place. You feel like you're going back in time. The decor is all very classic and timeless. I was seated next to a fireplace while I enjoyed my brunch on my birthday. I think it was my 24th birthday, and it was it felt really special and decadent and fun, but it wasn't like astronomical prices or anything. Another place I love is Doi Moi. It's a really fantastic, I think they're technically a Vietnamese food restaurant on 14th Street. My girlfriends and I used to go there for girls' night all the time. Now they've pretty much all moved, so we don't do that anymore, but I love Doi Moi. It's really fun, great vibes, great food, great service. Okay, Chloe is another one. Chloe is in Navy Yard. It's kind of like a tapas style restaurant, but everything is so, so good. The Brussels sprouts are jaw-dropping, really great cocktails too. Barcelona is a great restaurant. It's It's kind of like Spanish food, obviously. Barcelona, I think they call themselves a wine bar. It's on 14th Street. Again, great tapas, great wine, great girls' night. Another cool restaurant is Marketo. So Marketo is another Asian fusion restaurant. It's a little bit fancier, a little more upscale. It's not even fancy, actually. It's just kind of more, it feels kind of designery. I don't really know what the right word is, but it's a little bit more expensive than Copycat Co. as far as Asian fusion, but it's definitely an experience. I advise everyone to go there at least once. They try to be super trendy. It makes me think of Kanye West because they sell like street style clothing and stuff in the front, and then there's also a restaurant going on, and it all kind of feels like all about the presentation, all about the art. It's really fun though. It's a fun experience. Lastly, I would say POV. This is kind of more of a bar than it is a restaurant, but it stands for point of view because you have an amazing view of DC. You can basically see into the White House backyard. You can see the Washington Monument really close up. Go there at sunset to watch the sunset over DC at POV. It's like a rooftop, which is why you have those amazing views. Definitely recommend. Cafes you must check out. Okay, so I don't go to a ton of cafes here, and I think because it is a city, there are a lot of like chain cafes, but a great one is Cafe Georgetown. I've gone there for tea, I've gone there for a cocktail, I've gone there for baked goods. It's really great, and it's in a great location in Georgetown. Fun little place to drop in. I'm probably gonna say this wrong. Kintsugi, Kintsugi. It's a part of the Easton Hotel in downtown DC. It's a really great cafe, really great vibes. They have this amazing greenery wall. You feel like you're sitting in a greenhouse. Great for photographs, but also like great baked goods, coffee, etc. You can't really go inside, but I love sitting outside. Sometimes they have little tables at Souk. Souk is in Cap Hill, and the best chai in DC. Every single time I go, it's incredible. Get it with some oat milk. So good, and their baked goods are really good too. And then lastly, Tate. Tate is a newer cafe that they came in 2020, and it feels like you are at a fancy cafe in like New York City or something like that. Great vibes because it's new. It feels like really fresh and innovative for DC. It's really big, great decor, great food. I've had food there, I've had coffee there, I've had chai there, I've had baked goods there, breakfast there. It's all really good. What are your fave DC brunch spots? I need to try new places this spring or summer. Yes, you do, girl. Okay, so some of the other restaurants I mentioned have great brunch as well, but then these are my favorites specifically for brunch. Bluestone Lane is fantastic. They have a Ladurée here, which is fantastic. That one is in Georgetown, so it's also kind of fun to walk around Georgetown before or after brunch. Mission Brunch, there are 2 locations for Mission. There's one in DuPont Circle and then one in Navy Yard. And Mission Brunch is fantastic. If you love a bougie brunch, you're definitely gonna love it. If you love Mexican food, it's good. I love getting, I forget what they call it, but it's like an egg scrambled bowl with basically a deconstructed taco with it, with bottomless mimosas. It's really good. You can also get bottomless margaritas, but I don't do tequila. So Mission is always a fun girls brunch where you go to brunch and then you go home and you do nothing else the rest of the day. Lastly, I'm saving, this is genuinely one of my favorite restaurants and my favorite place to brunch. It's called Unconventional Diner. It's really cute. The food is all so good. Per the name, they take kind of normal sounding recipes and then they do something unconventional with it, and it's always kind of like, is this gonna be good? But then you taste it and it is the most amazing thing to ever grace your tongue. It's such a good restaurant. Highly recommend. Unconventional Diner. So good. And that makes up pretty much, between all of those places, my favorite places in DC. I do have an extensive blog post with my favorite restaurants. You can click that in the description below and have access to it. You know, you can save it as a bookmark in your phone and always have that as a resource for you. Lastly, last question, guys. What's your fave thing to do on weekends in DC? Definitely brunch, definitely like walk around the monuments. And I feel like that's really it. Walking around Georgetown is really a great thing to do on weekends. Walking all the way around the tidal basin is like my new favorite thing to do. It's such a nice walk. It looks like it's gonna be a giant walk, but it goes by really quickly. I also love there are fun estates to go to. I recently went to Hillwood Estate, and it is so fun if you're into history and beautiful houses and walking around outside in fabulous gardens. That's an amazing thing. Probably one of my favorite things to do on a Saturday. But yeah, like doing a walk along the National Mall or along the reflection pool near the Lincoln Memorial, around the tidal basin. It's just really great to be out and about, especially when the weather's nice. Oh my gosh. I honestly can't remember what I did on weekends when life was normal. Honestly, brunch. We brunch a lot in DC. I think we have made it a sport, and I highly recommend any of the places. Even the places that I said before I answered the brunch question, they have great brunches as well, so be sure to check them out. Thank you guys so much for submitting questions to this Q&A. If you guys have any more questions about living in DC or life in DC, please comment them below. I'll be happy to answer them for you. And feel free to follow me on Instagram, send me a DM. I get to all of my DMs, so if you have any other questions, feel free to reach out to me. I would love to connect with you. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope you guys are having a great day.